the limits to war from a normative perspective can be collected under the heading of the just war tradition. Just war doesn't mean holy war. It means justified or admissible war. It's a way to distinguish just from unjust wars, and includes this tradition that starts with Augustine, includes two moments. The jus ad bellum, the right to go to war, which in modern times coincides with being a sovereign state and is now normatively redefined and restricted by the UN Charter, according to which you can go to war only in self-defense or in military actions approved by the Security Council, and the jus in bello moment, the laws of war, which are now defined by the Geneva Conventions of 1949 that try to put remedies to the horrors of World War II. First of all, redefining the distinction between combatants and non-combatants. You may now expect that I tell you something or much stuff about the causes of war, but this is really would be really a too large a chapter, so I limit myself with mentioning the most better known and somehow classical description of the causes of war by the one of the last representatives of the American political realism, Kenneth Waltz. Waltz said there are three levels or three images of explanations of the phenomenon of war, and either war comes from the nature of man, from an anthropological explanation, or it comes from the aggressive domestic regime, political, and perhaps we can add also in economic sense. Or, and this is his fundamental addition, it comes from the anarchical international system in the sense we have described the international system and the anarchical societies in the previous videos. Waltz adds, and this is important, that the anarchical international system explains the possibility of war. He calls it the permissive cause, but it doesn't explain any single war. If you want to understand within the framework of the anarchical system the waging or the outbreak of a single war, you must find the explanation either in anthropological motives or rather in the domestic regime, the efficient or immediate causes of war. Other explanations of war are also classical. Thucydides saw it in the fear between the two major countries of ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta. Barbara Tuchman, the author of a famous book, The Guns of August, explained the outbreak of World War I fundamentally with misperceptions among the big powers. This book, by the way, is thought to have been important, to have influenced the mind of John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. And Robert Jarvis did later a study of the misperceptions in the, on the background of a possible nuclear war or failed nuclear deterrence. Whatever the limits of war, the attempted limits to war, in the 20th century, the modern international order described in the previous slides did collapse. And the limits of war at times did disappear because of, in several stages. The first stage was the invention of aerial warfare that cancelled the limits between combatants and non-combatants. I made, as a little child myself, some 70 years ago, the experience of aerial bombardment, non-respecting the distinction between combatants and non-combatants. I was, of course, a non-combatant. The total war is not what you may think it is. It's not the war in which everybody kills everybody. Total war is the war as the First World War was, first in Germany but then in other countries, in which all resources and the whole strength of a country is employed in the war effort. Ideological war started a little bit in World War I, developed in the wars between the two world wars, such as in the Spanish Civil War, and defined fully World War II and then Cold War. If you want to have a acoustic musical impression of how war developed, you may compare Joseph Haydn's Missa in Tempore Belli, an elegant composition of the 18th century, Mass in the time of war, with the terrifying piece by, for voice and orchestra by Arnold Schoenberg, a survivor from Warsaw, from the Warsaw and the Warsaw Ghetto, erased by the Nazi troops. This was, however, not enough. And we, the humankind, also invented nuclear war, which was not fought. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here to tell this history, but which became possible as a mutual assured destruction, MAD or MAD, since the mid-50s, after the USA and the Soviet Union acquired the power for massive retaliations. After the end of the Cold War and the disruption of what used to be a bipolar hegemonic peace, what came up have been the so-called wars of the third kind: tribal wars, ethnic wars, religious wars, terrorist wars, wars in which public and private criminal organizations work together. And this is it's the wars of our times. And this is a big problem for the jus in bello, because the laws of war tend not to be at all respected in this kind of war.